Before we begin this podcast, please be advised that the following episode contains language that some listeners may find offensive and inappropriate. The opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not reflect the views of the podcast producers. Listener discretion is advised.
In this episode of Voices of a Killer, we explore the harrowing and chaotic story of Derrell Spellmeyer, a man whose life spiraled from casual drug use into the horrific double homicide of Freddie and Carol Wilson and a life behind bars. This isn't the story of a career criminal or someone hardened by a rough upbringing, but a man whose direction in life faltered at every possible moment. As we unravel Derrell's bizarre story, we hear one of the most shocking admissions we've heard in a while. An admission that blurs the lines between intent and intoxication, crime and chaos. Alongside him were Mandy and Garland Mitchell, friends who found themselves trapped in a nightmare that would change all three of their lives forever. Decide for yourself, was this a calculated act of brutality or the desperate actions of a man losing control? We hear it all on this episode of Voices of a Killer.
Derrell, where exactly are you from?
I'm from Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, the city, huh? What did your parents do?
My mom was a bartender. My dad was a welder.
Okay. How would you describe your childhood?
It was good. We had all kinds of toys. We had every kind of toy you can think of. For Christmas, we'd always have a big Christmas.
Yeah.
Birthdays, we always had big birthday parties and had all kinds of gifts.
Yeah.
So I had a good childhood.
Yeah. Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I got two half sisters, a half brother, and a whole sister.
Did you see anything out of the ordinary growing up, like violence or anything?
No, not really.
Your parents didn't do drugs or alcohol?
No, my mom didn't drink. My dad did. My real dad was a drinker though. But
Yeah. You
I
grew
was
up.
raised mainly by my stepfather. My real dad was living in Texas most of the time.
Yeah. So you just you didn't really have a relationship with your real dad. You just lived with your mom and stepdad.
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you do in school? Good student?
No, I could have made grade A's, but I choose not to. I was a slacker. I always goofed off and didn't really care, and I got whippings for it, getting an F every time.
Yeah.
I always got my ass whipped big time.
Yeah. So did you graduate high school?
No, I was a flunky.
Yeah.
I dropped out in 10th grade.
So by the time you dropped out, you didn't experience anything traumatic?
No, I was hooked on alcohol and marijuana.
You drank whenever you were a young teenager?
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you end up doing when you dropped out?
I just hung around and partied all the time.
Yeah. When did you get into drugs?
I got into drugs when I was 13.
Yeah. What kind? Besides marijuana?
Did cocaine. Cocaine I love.
Yeah.
I shoot cocaine and snort crystal.
So coke and meth. Did you ever go to rehab? I said coke and meth is what you were doing.
Yeah, I
when
went
you were young?
to rehab. I went to rehab about 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Had you ever been in trouble with the law whenever you were a young adult?
Yeah, for DWIs when I was 16 years old. I'd get DWIs left and right.
Yeah. How old are you right now?
55 years old.
And how old are you whenever this crime was committed?
How old was I when this crime was committed?
Yeah.
Oh, about 40-something years old. I can't remember exactly how old I was. I was in my 40s.
Yeah. So it seems like, you had pretty much of a normal childhood and growing up and stuff. I mean, obviously you dropped out and kind of got into doing drugs and stuff, but not something really crazy. But is it safe to say that you're a killer?
No, I I wouldn't say I was a killer, but I did.
You don't look at yourself as a killer?
Yeah, I do now.
You do now?
Yeah, I do now.
It sounds like your tone changed a little bit, like I gave you some kind of realization.
No.
So the reason I ask you that is because the crime that you committed, it's pretty deep. You realize that, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to go back to the time that this happened, this error.
Unlike many of the individuals we feature on this show, Derrell's early life paints a different picture, one of a stable, loving home. Raised by his mother and stepfather, his childhood appeared free from trauma. The only sign of dysfunction came from his biological father in Texas, who battled with alcoholism. But despite this seemingly solid upbringing, Derrell's teenage years were dominated by drugs and alcohol. School quickly took a backseat as he slipped into a world of partying and addiction. He dropped out in the 10th grade, walking away from the potential of being a straight A student simply because, as he recalls, he didn't care. By the age of 13, Derrell was already using hard drugs, shooting cocaine and snorting crystal meth, habits that would fuel his downward spiral. Brushes with the law became frequent, leading to multiple driving while intoxicated charges and stints in rehab that never stuck. Addiction tightened its grip, propelling Derrell into a life of chaos, culminating in life behind bars for a horrifying crime that could have easily been avoided. More on this after the break.
What kind of person were you back then, before this happened?
I was a preacher. And I got hooked on pills. I got hooked on pain pills.
Did you just say you were a preacher?
Yeah, I was a preacher, and I rode with CMA, Christian Motorcycle Association. I got ordained online. I did weddings, baptisms, and funerals.
And while you were doing this, you were using drugs?
I was using pain pills.
Yeah. How many?
I got hooked on pain pills.
Yeah, what kind of pain pills did you eat?
Hydrocodone.
How many would you take a day?
Oh, about 10, 15, or 20 pills a day.
Yeah. And did you start doing stuff where you can make sure and keep that going? Yeah, did you commit crimes and start to do things that helped you make sure that stayed on track?
No, I didn't have to do no crime. I had a fixed income, and I always did odd jobs.
Yeah.
As a carpenter.
So people, we understand that whenever people do opiates, heroin, things like that, they can nod out, and it's really obvious when people start to nod out. And doing 10, 15, 20 pills a day, did you ever nod out where people are like, hey, we know what's going on?
No, they hyped me up. They made me hyper.
Yeah. Yeah. So they made you buzz around. At what point did you feel like you had a problem? Was it early on?
I feel like I had a problem with it.
Yeah. Was it early on, or did you ever think that?
Yeah, I started realizing I had a problem with it, and I couldn't figure out how to get out of it. So I figured what I'd do is I'd buy some more pills, and then I'd drink, and I'd figure I'd taper off with the pills and drink. And that's why I went to go buy those pills. That's why I killed them people.
Yeah.
Buy some more pills.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. Do you have any kids?
I have a daughter that I never got to see. Her name is Tara.
Tara?
Tara. She was put up for adoption when she was a baby.
Really?
I never got to see her. Her mother put a peace bond on me. Her grandmother did.
Put a what on you?
A peace bond to keep me away.
What is that? A peace bond?
Peace bond. A warrant to keep me away.
Gotcha.
From coming around.
When did this happen? After your murder?
No, that happened when I was young man when I was about 18.
Yeah. Why did they do that to you at such a young age?
Because I was hooked on drugs and alcohol then at the time. They didn't want no part of me.
Did people in the community and everybody know that you were somebody that was hooked on drugs?
Well, they knew it, but they didn't want to admit it.
So you became an ordained minister. That's why I was wondering, you were getting jobs, you were getting like hired to do weddings and things like that. Was this in Kansas City or somewhere else?
Down in Lake the Ozarks.
Like
See, I did 7 years in the penitentiary for an assault charge, and I got out and I sobered up. And since I was sober, I did it.
So you basically you turned yourself you turned your life around and then you relapsed, basically.
Yeah.
What happened with the assault charge?
Do what?
The assault charge. What happened?
Oh, a guy come over and he was a child molester, and he had kids over to his house, and he was telling me things that he was wanting to do to them. And I took a steel weight and I bashed the brains in with it. And they got me on domestic assault charge on it.
Yeah. And how long did you actually sit in prison?
I did 4 years and 8 months.
Do you feel like that changed you?
Yeah, it woke me up. It really was an eye-opener. I turned to God, and he saved me, but I let him down.
So whenever you were in prison, that was something that really made you turn around, and you got out and were on the right track and stuff, and you became an ordained minister and basically started getting on the right track. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
Derrell's past holds a shocking twist. He was once a preacher. Despite his struggles with addiction, particularly to pain pills, Derrell wore the mantle of a man of God. He officiated weddings, performed baptisms, and presided over funerals, roles that not only gave him purpose, but also kept him financially afloat. Yet, the grip of his addictions remained strong, overshadowing his otherwise noble work. His journey towards sobriety has been turbulent. After being sentenced to 7 years in prison for a domestic assault charge, stemming from an altercation with a suspected child molester, Derrell only spent 4 years and 8 months behind bars. The prison systems are meant to clean up the addicted and shed light on the crimes they've committed, ultimately allowing them to return to society a changed person with a new outlook on life. Often during this time, many inmates turn to religion as a crutch for their mental state. This was no different for Derrell. It was during this time that he turned to God, a decision he says saved him. This newfound faith eventually led to his role as an ordained minister. But as we'll see, this story does not end in triumph. Derrell would relapse, unable to break free from the destructive habits that haunted him. In situations like these, a solid community can offer support to those in need, particularly those communities with ties to the church. But Derrell found little solace in the help that could have been offered. His community failed to see or act on his struggles, turning a blind eye to his worsening addiction. Isolated and spiraling, the combined rush from pills and alcohol sent Derrell down a dangerous path.
So the day that this happened, your murder, were you just completely hell-bent on pills and alcohol?
Yeah, I smoked some K2 too.
Uh-oh.
I think the K2 messed with me really bad.
I think that's, from what I understand and what I've seen research and all that, K2 is extremely bad, and everybody thinks it's just some synthetic stuff that's like marijuana. It's not like marijuana. It just simply looks like it.
It made me hallucinate.
Oh, yeah. Like, I've seen people fall on the ground and throw up. It's crazy. So you were doing that at the time this murder occurred?
Yeah. This one guy introduced me to K2. He said, "Here, smoke some of this here."
Yeah.
And he said it was weed, but it wasn't weed. It was K2.
Yeah.
After I smoked it, he told me it was K2.
So the day that this murder occurred, how long before that had you done something that had to do with ministering?
How long has it been something ministering?
Yeah, before the murder. How long had you been out of it or done something or whatever? Were you still in it?
Yeah, I was still in it, but I didn't really do anything lately.
Yeah. Okay. Here's what I want to do, Derrell. I want to go step by step on this murder, and I want to know that day, did you wake up just doing drugs and take off that day of the murder?
Yeah, I woke up. I got drunk, and then I had a couple of pills left, and I knew I needed more pills.
Yeah. So you
And I
had.
went down and I bummed a ride from a guy. I asked him for a ride, and he said, "I can't give you a ride," but he said, "My wife and my brother give you a ride out there to the place I needed to go."
Who are these people you're talking to?
The people I talked to was
the co-defendants?
My co-defendant, Garland Mitchell.
Yeah,
Mandy Mitchell.
And Mandy Mitchell, Garland and Mandy Mitchell. Just to slow down a little bit, because I want to go through this a little bit slower. How did you know Garland and Mandy Mitchell?
How did I know them?
Yes.
They lived down the street from me, and I'd take and go to Walmart all the time, and I'd drive by their house, and I'd see them sitting out on the porch, and I did a wedding for them.
Ah, okay. So you actually did some ministering for them, is the way to say that. Yeah. So were they into drugs?
Yeah, they was into weed and alcohol.
Pills?
Yeah, I guess he was in pills. He wanted some pills.
From doing hard drugs at the young age of 13 to dropping out of school at age 16 and then eventually becoming a preacher, Derrell's life appeared to be that of a movie. After his first arrest for assault, Derrell turned to God and tried to set his life on track. Unfortunately, his addictions held him back, resulting in a cascading downward fall to a life in prison. Can he be blamed for the lack of help? Or were his multiple chances of rehabilitation enough to write him off? In the next episode, we discover the gruesome details of the murders. We learn Derrell's true intentions that night and try to understand the complexities of his motive. What caused him to go over the edge, and how were his co-defendants Garland and Mandy Mitchell involved? We find out on the next episode of Voices of a Killer. If you want to find out what happens next, right now, you can sign up at patreon.com/voicesofakiller. There you can find bonus content, early access, ad-free listening, and access to our chat community. So go to patreon.com/voicesofakiller to sign up now. Your support is what keeps us passionate about bringing these stories to you. That's a wrap on this episode of Voices of a Killer. A big shout out to Sonic Futures, who handled the production, audio editing, music licensing, and promotion of this podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, make sure to visit our website at voicesofakiller.com. There you can find previous episodes, transcripts, and additional information about the podcast. Lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your feedback helps us improve and reach new listeners. Thank you for your support, and we can't wait to share more stories with you in the future. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Toby, and we'll see you next time on Voices of a Killer.